What is going on, everyone? Darkside Phil here with a special vlog, and I'm going to be honest with you, this one is going to be more like a rant than anything else. And I just want to call upon something that usually I don't reference and I don't call upon, at least not for the past several years, alright? Many of you may not know this, but I used to be a competitor and an actual contender when it came to competitive fighting games. A lot of people say, oh, don't call it pro fighting game player, because unless you made a complete living doing it, you weren't a professional. When I was playing competitive fighting games, no one was doing it as a job. It wasn't possible. There was no sponsorship. There was nothing like that whatsoever. But I competed at a top level in several different games. In the late 90s and early 2000s, I always tried my hand at games like Marvel vs. Capcom 1 and 2, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, and I did dabble with other games like Capcom vs. SNK 2 and Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. There was a kind of a dead period where there were no new Capcom games for quite a while, but when there was a resurgence in the mid-2000s of the re-releases and HD remasters of games such as Super Turbo, I was playing that at a very high competitive level. And then, of course, when Street Fighter 4 came out, I covered it in depth for YouTube. This was at the very beginning of my era of videos for YouTube. And I tried to play it at a competitive level for about a year or two. After a while, I decided I would rather more focus on doing a YouTube career rather than just being a competitive fighting game player, because I knew it would take far too much time and effort and investment for me to be at a high competitive level. Rather than doing that, I'd rather just have fun playing a variety of games for YouTube. And considering here I am, 8 years later, still making videos for YouTube and making a living doing it, I think I made the right decision. The reason I'm making this video today is because we are now 7 months, that's 7 months, after the launch of Street Fighter V. It launched back in mid-February of 2016. And boy, has it been one of the most controversial subjects when it comes to fighting game players, just the mainstream fighting game community. But it's funny, because it seems to me like if you listen to the mainstream game community versus the hardcore FGC, or fighting game community, they seem to be saying completely different things when it comes to Street Fighter V. Now, the thing is, I am much more in line with the mainstream community than I am at all with the competitive fighting game community anymore, because I'm not a part of that competitive atmosphere anymore. I don't attend tournaments. I don't play at a high level. I don't watch gameplay streams. And hell, I haven't even been playing Street Fighter V against a person at anywhere in person ever. I've only played the game online, okay? So everything that I'm telling you of Street Fighter V, all of the things and opinions that are reflected in this video are based upon my wealth of experience playing Street Fighter II the day it launched in United States arcades, way back when in the early 1990s, playing every iteration of Street Fighter II, 3, Alpha, the CVS series, the Versus series, all of those games up to now. I've played them all, at least at a semi-competitive level, and I can give you my honest opinion about Street Fighter V. The mainstream gamers can seem to say, this game sucks because when it launched, it didn't have a lot of content, and it has a limited roster, and the online play is iffy for some people, still to this day. And, you know, they release all these DLC characters, but the DLC characters don't seem that great. So to the mainstream gamers, Street Fighter V is a flop. It did not appeal. If you actually look at sales numbers, alright, the game did not do anywhere nearly as well as any of the numbered entries in the Street Fighter series previously. In particular, the one you have to compare it with is Street Fighter 4, because that one was the last major one, and it was in this same kind of modern era, versus Street Fighter 3 was way back in the late 90s, so you can't really have a direct comparison there. And you have to say, wow, sales numbers, it's a flop. It didn't reach Capcom sales expectations. It did not even get close to the sales numbers of Street Fighter 4. It's a flop. But if you ask the people in the competitive fighting game community, they'll paint a completely different picture. They'll say it's one of the best Street Fighters ever, that the Street Fighter community is the biggest that it's ever been. Look at stream attendance, every stream for every tournament and EVO, all the stream numbers are higher than they've ever been before for Street Fighter 4, and they will spew all of this kind of positive spin on Street Fighter V, making it seem like it's one of the best fighting games ever made. I'm here today in this video to spew a little bit of truth for you, because the bottom line is I have no kind of investment in the fighting game community or Street Fighter V. Like I already mentioned, I'm a more diversified person. I do a wide variety of games on YouTube, and although I like covering fighting games, If a game fails or if a game is admittedly a bad game, I can call it that. Because I don't have to pull the wool over everyone's eyes and make them like seeing this game for the sake of personal benefit. Sadly, I hate to say it, but it looks like most of the competitive fighting game community when it comes to Street Fighter V are bullshitting you. They are telling you that this game is great at a high competitive level, it's amazing, and you don't have to listen to any of these mainstream naysayers. They're just noobs. They don't know what they're talking about. It's just that now it's a more wide-stream appeal for all games, so of course you're going to have more people talking shit about Street Fighter than ever before, and they will give you 5 million reasons why Street Fighter V is a great competitive game, and you should watch the streams, and you should watch them play it on stream, and you should attend tournaments, and you should put money into it, and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, bullshit. I'm sorry. I'm going to be honest with everyone here, alright? And I'm sure some people are going to circulate this video amongst the hardcore FGC, and I'm sure there will be people who will respond and say stupid shit. I don't care. The bottom line is this. A lot of people wonder why I'm not well regarded in the fighting game community anymore. A lot of it was because when I started out, I was very immature, and I talked a lot of shit, and I always kind of had confrontational things go on at tournaments and things like that. But that all ended around, say, I don't know, I'd say probably the early to mid 2000s. The real reason why I'm not welcome in the fighting game community a lot of times anymore, especially when it comes to places like EVO or anything in California, is because I was always the whistleblower in the Street Fighter community. If there was bullshit going on at a tournament, if there was corruption, if there was something there that just didn't seem kosher, or if the organizers of Shoryuken.com or the forums or the tournaments themselves were doing collusion and other kinds of stuff, I would speak up and call them out on it. They don't like me because of that. I actually got into trouble many times, was permanently banned from Shoryuken.com multiple times, although sometimes I ended up getting unbanned and then, brought back or whatever for whatever reason. The bottom line is they don't like me because I'm honest, because I will stir the shit if there's shit to be stirred, because people need to know the truth. And the bottom line is, the situation right now with Street Fighter V is one of these situations where people are having the wool pulled over their eyes for the benefit of this select group of upper echelon players who are making money on a living of playing competitive fighting games. The bottom line is that Street Fighter V is fucking inferior to every numbered Street Fighter. The only one I would say that came close to being this bad was the original vanilla Street Fighter 3, which was called New Generation. That one was very broken at launch, but then when they released Second Impact and Third Strike, the game became progressively better over the next couple of years and made it tournament worthy. Street Fighter 5 is not a good game when it comes to competitive gameplay, and I'm going to break it down for you why. And I'm also going to show you some of the ridiculous defenses that these pro fighting game players are coming out and saying to protect their own asses, so you'll still turn up to watch their gameplay streams, to watch the tournament footage, and basically to say that the game's good so that you keep making the money and give them their popularity, rather than actually tell the truth about Street Fighter V, that it's one of the poorest developed Street Fighters ever, implemented as a competitive game. It's fucking garbage, and the game should basically be thrown out so that we can have them start working on a legitimate game, rather than just keep adding on DLC characters to a game that's a piece of garbage. Alright? Already, just because I said that, I'm already going to get tons of shit. But here goes, because I'm fucking real, and I'm going to tell you exactly how it is, rather than try to lie to you to make money. Okay? First of all, Street Fighter V has far too few characters. It's that simple. Street Fighter 4 had more. Almost every competitive fighting game has had more up to now, especially in 2016. You need more than just a core selection of characters, and they didn't do a good job. What they basically did in Street Fighter V, they added a bunch of new characters, which is great, and then they took every character from a game that basically hadn't been in Street Fighter recently and crammed them the fuck in there to say, oh look, returning characters, and try to build up hype for a game. It doesn't work. What they needed to do when they created the cast of Street Fighter V, they needed to make a balance of characters. They didn't do that. If you actually look at the cast of Street Fighter V, at a fundamental level, the reason that the game is not good competitively is because everyone who doesn't have the same properties sucks. So allow me to explain. Characters like Chun-li, Ryu, Nash, they're great. You want to know why they're great? Because they have invincible reversal moves. When they're in a trouble and they're getting rushed down or attacked rapidly, they can blow through your attack string with an invincible reversal move. They have some of the best moves in the game, 3-frame moves, meaning they're incredibly fast at implementation, they have the most invincibility, they have the ability to combat others in a way that the others can't do because they don't have these invincible reversals and these 3-frame moves. They just can't. They can't hold a candle to the rest of the cast, this upper echelon of the tier list of Street Fighter V. Okay? Now, that's logical sense coming to you, and I know a lot of you might not even know what I'm talking about if you don't have a technical mind for fighting games. That's just black and white. The upper echelon of Street Fighter V have things that the other casts don't have. They have more options and tools because they were given these abilities, alright? Now, here's what I want to ask you. Look at all the other Street Fighter games in the past, right? You had charge characters, you had motion characters, you had everyone. But typically when you look at tier lists for games, you can see that there's a variety of characters that usually can sit at the top. It's not just one style of character. It may be that maybe 2 or 3 characters have a really overpowered stuff, but they don't all play the same. The bottom line is all of the characters at the top of Street Fighter V play the fucking same. That's the sign of a dev team that didn't know what they were doing, because a good fighting game has a wide variety. I mean, Blanca, first of all, he's not even in Street Fighter V. He's always kind of been, if played at a competitive level, a really good character. If you look at games like CVS 2 and Street Fighter 4, he was always kind of viable. Now, of course, they nerfed him several times and he ended up not being as good. But the bottom line is, look at E Honda, right? He was almost like tournament worthy. Now, are you going to tell me that E Honda plays the same as Ryu? Fuck no. They're completely different style of characters. The problem is, in Street Fighter V, you don't have that diversity. The top tier of the game is all the same shit. And one of the major complaints that people have been giving is that all year they're hyping DLC character coming out, DLC characters coming out, pay more money to get the DLC characters. And then the DLC character comes out, oops, doesn't have an invincible reversal, doesn't have those good 3-frame moves, the character sucks. And then everyone complains, well, what the fuck? You hyped up this character and you didn't give them the tools of the already established top tier Street Fighter V. What gives? Now, that's a legitimate criticism. But now, alright, allow me to give you my first kind of point here in regards to how the competitive fighting game community wants to super go defense force on Street Fighter V and protect it from any legitimate criticism. Here's a direct quote from the front page of EventHubs.com. For those of you who don't know, EventHubs.com is a major fighting game coverage website. The byline states, are we being a bit too harsh on Street Fighter V's DLC characters? Well, Alex Valle's wisdom says that these new fighters aren't as bad as we think. And if you go to read the series of tweets that this article quotes, basically it's Valle saying, listen, you gotta look historically at Street Fighter. If you look at games from the past, the characters who were top tier at the very beginning weren't necessarily top tier the entire time, or vice versa. Maybe they did stay top tier, but over the development of that game's life cycle, other characters were developed after they had more time to be played, and they were found to be up there as well. So here's some examples of this. Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. When the game first released, everyone complained that Ken, Chun-Li, and eventually Yun, or Yun, however you fucking say his name, were the 3 top tier characters and no one could hold a candle to them. But over the development of this game over the 2000s, people found that characters like Urien, right? Characters like Yang, these characters could be played at a competitive level, that they could actually hold their own in a tournament setting, okay? And it is definitely needs to be said, this is a true statement. Also, look at Street Fighter 4. When Street Fighter 4 Vanilla was released, Sagat was the most powerful character by far, because he had the easy FADC cancel into a giant combo with his Ultra that did insane damage. He could even trade his Tiger Uppercut and still get the insane damage. No one else could do that. If they traded, they couldn't get that free damage like Sagat could. Alright? But then, over the time of development of the game, the established top tier of characters like Sagat then had to give way to characters like Seth, or Sea Viper, right? These characters weren't tournament top tier worthy at the launch of the game, but after a few months of people playing it competitively, they found that these characters, even though they're a lot harder to play, ended up being top tournament contenders. Fine, I'll acknowledge that. That's an absolutely true statement. But here's the problem with what Valle is saying. All of the characters that Valle just described were in the fucking games at launch. Street Fighter 3 Third Strike had those characters in it. So did Street Fighter 4. You didn't pay extra money to get those characters, right? They weren't released later on. So his argument is, oh, well, you just need more time with those characters. Okay, but I had to pay money for those fucking characters to be in the game in additional to the $60 that I already fucking paid. So you're telling me that I have to now take extra time for this character to develop because they already established this really easy mode top tier who have all the best attributes of the top tier characters in the game. And if I want to actually be good with a DLC character, not only do I have to pay extra money to fucking get them later on in the life cycle of the game, but now I have to take even more time to just keep playing and playing and fucking playing. The question here is, how much of a life cycle is Street Fighter V gonna fucking have, right? Street Fighter 3 Third Strike all pretty much died in the late 90s, early 2000s. It went away. It was always a game that was played as a side game in tournaments. And it was only after like 8 years of people playing this as a side game that they found out, oh my god, these other characters can be played at a top tournament level too. Are we going to be playing Street Fighter V for 8 fucking years? Of course we're not. That's a preposterous statement. It's a preposterous notion. Street Fighter 4, those characters, Seth and Sea Viper, they were already found to be good within the first year. We're 7 months into the life cycle of Street Fighter V, and we haven't found really viable contenders who can blow through that top tier of the Street Fighter V character list yet. So I call bullshit. This statement down here is bullshit. This is not comparable in Street Fighter V situation to previous Street Fighter games. It's a completely different situation. It's complete bullshit. Yes, it is true that if we just sat there and played the same version of Street Fighter V over and over and over for the next several years, maybe some of the mid-tiers will find some kind of a strategy that they can actually compete with the top tiers, but it's not going to be like that. And Capcom has already announced that probably once a year they're going to tweak the game. There won't be like a Super Street Fighter V or an Ultra Street Fighter V. Instead, they're going to tweak it. So why next year they're just going to tweak it anyway? So why even spend time playing the mid-tier characters when you know Capcom's going to patch the fucking game next year and probably change it all? So guess what? Via's statement, completely invalid, makes no fucking sense. It doesn't even apply to this situation. Let's talk about some other things that are major criticisms of Street Fighter V that people are just like writing off and saying, oh, that's not a valid criticism and how dare you, it's a good competitive game. One of the major criticisms of Street Fighter V from the get-go has been that it didn't feel like the other Street Fighters and no one could really put their finger on it until a few months ago when it was announced, oh, Street Fighter V has 8 frames of in-game input lag, meaning it's actually has the most designed input lag in it than any competitive Street Fighter game up to now, okay? What that means is when you press your button, it doesn't react immediately. There's installed 8 frames between when you press this and when that thing actually will happen on your television screen. And it's bigger than any other game. Now, a lot of people are up in arms about this. In particular, a lot of competitive people and also some, mainstream gamers. They're like, you're telling me if someone jumps at me and in Street Fighter 4, I can do an anti-air move faster than I could ever do it in Street Fighter 5 because of the input lag. The answer is yes. You will get better reactions in any other Street Fighter game than in Street Fighter 5, period. It's just that simple. Now, the competitive fighting game community who are so into Street Fighter V and needed to succeed have made all these fucking excuses up. In fact, here's another headline, straight from the front page of EventHubs.com from the other day. Oh, L.I. Joe to the Street Fighter V community. The game's input lag was clearly intentional, so stop whining about it. And if you read the article, it's about how he was on some show or podcast, and he was basically saying, well, didn't you see that in the actual gameplay of Street Fighter V, that some of the moves have longer frames than in any other Street Fighter before, like active frames. So in one Street Fighter, you'd press jab, and it would be out there. In Street Fighter V, you press jab, and it goes out there and lasts longer. All right? Okay, and, like, what does that prove? I'll tell you what it proves. It proves that the game developers are fucking hacks and made a worse version of Street Fighter than all the others. Just because you're making a justification for more delay doesn't mean it's better than previous Street Fighter games. It actually means at its innate core that it's worse. In any competitive situation, you need to have the fastest possible reaction. Why don't you go ask a basketball player who, gee, when someone's coming at you and they're going to steal, do you think you'd like to react immediately or a little bit more delay? Oh, well, I'd like the more delay. Yeah, right. No one's going to fucking tell you that. It's just black and white logic that more input delay makes a game worse. If you can't react fast enough to something happening in a competitive environment, you are at a disadvantage. Street Fighter V is that game. In fact, I will tell you, I grew up with Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo being my competitive game in arcades, okay? There's no way that someone who's only played Street Fighter V could jump into Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo and ever fucking play it at a competitive level because that game is fucking delayed. It's that simple. You could not go back to the games that need better hand-eye coordination, better and faster reactions, because that game plays slow. And that's a sad fact. Street Fighter V plays slow. When you get a quote like this, oh, stop whining about it because it's just in there and, you know, the game is designed for bullshit. Call it what it is. Terrible compared to previous Street Fighter games. Worse. It's not better. It's not okay. It's worse. This is a black and white fucking situation that cannot be remedied by spinning it your way and just telling people not to fucking whine. That's ridiculous. If something's worse, you have a right to complain. If Capcom has a reputation to uphold, because in the past they've always been held in the upper echelon of the best fighting game developers, if they develop a fighting game that's not as good as the previous ones, you, as a gamer, have a right to fucking complain and call them out for their bullshit and their shortcomings. Because the bottom line is, if we listen to L.I. Joe and we all stop complaining, guess what? They'll never make a better game. They'll just go back even further. Oh, well, they were okay with the 8 frames. Give them fucking 10 now because it's obvious that the whole fighting game community is just going to accept it and play it because it has the fucking Capcom stamp on it and they want to get their E-hype and their stream monsters and make their fucking money streaming the game. Doesn't matter how bad the fucking game is. Make it even worse. That's what's going to happen. No, you have to demand something better or that game developer will do worse. This is the worst possible reaction you could ever have to having factual evidence that a game is not as good as its previous iterations. It's ridiculous, and it's so fucking irresponsible to say shit like that to a fan base or a viewer base who may not understand the game at a competitive level. That's a dangerous fucking statement to make. Now, I have a picture to show everyone, all right? It's pretty funny, I'm going to admit. I found this morning on Twitter. Actually, one of my viewers tweeted it to me, and he had found it from someone else who had tweeted it, and no one knows who had originally created it, so I wish I could give credit to whoever originally created this picture. I can't, but this is pretty funny. Let me bring it up. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the Street Fighter V Defense Force bingo game. Ladies and gentlemen, that's right. Here are some of the hilariously common things that the competitive, my hand is not in the right place, competitive fighting game community are saying in defense of Street Fighter V so that you won't think it sucks and you'll keep playing it. Let's go from upper left to bottom right in order, left to right. We've got, oh, the devs intentionally made it this way. The devs intentionally made a bad game. No, if they did do it, it's because they're bad game developers, not because they wanted a slow, delayed game. It's because they're fucking hacks. I mean, it's not like they had multiple online betas and shit that didn't work to prove that, right? Let's see, next over. You're just a Third Strike or Street Fighter 4 fanboy. Yes, I'm a fan of good games. Top players aren't having any problems. I've already explained. Top players are playing the living fuck out of the game to make money, to get their sponsorships, to keep their live streams going, to keep having the money roll in and the E-fame and the attention roll in. If this game was even worse and more delayed, they would still kiss its fucking ass because this is the only current game that Capcom has out. And you know what? That's an important point that I want to bring up before we move on. You got to remember something. Capcom back in the day always had tons of fighting games out that could saturate the market. All right, let's talk about the launch of Street Fighter 3 New Generation. Most people hated the game. It's true. Most people say, oh, the stun is ridiculous. There's 2 or 3 characters in this game. If they hit you with one combo, you're stunned, and it's a touch of death combo where if you get hit once, the game's over. Okay? It was horribly broken, that game, at launch. That's why they came out with Second Impact and Third Strike to dramatically improve the gameplay engines. And most people from competitive level, yes, there were tournaments for New Generation, but it was kind of almost boycotted until a better version came out. So what did those gamers do? They went out and played the Street Fighter Alpha series, the Versus series, which was huge at the time, and then Capcom vs. SNK 1 and 2 started coming out. So there was always other games from Capcom at the time that were popular and were seen at a higher competitive level as Street Fighter 3 New Generation, and people went and played those. Guess what? There's nothing out there right now. Street Fighter 4 is old, and people are bored of it and don't want to play it anymore. Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 has been dead for years. I mean, that game was so broken at launch, and the only reason I think anyone ever enjoyed it was because it was so flashy and it would get lots of views on stream. At a competitive level, that versus Marvel vs. Capcom 3 and Ultimate were always trash. It was always a one-hit, you win the match. It was complete garbage. And then, wow, let's start playing Street Fighter Cross Tekken again. Oops, I shouldn't have mentioned the taboo game, right? So let's just ignore all the... Capcom has nothing that can be played right now at a competitive level besides Street Fighter V. So there's nothing else to go to. In the past, the competitive players would have said, well, I'm just going to boycott that and we'll play something else. Now they have to play Street Fighter V because if they don't, oh no, Street Fighter dies, right? It dies, it goes out of the limelight, and you'll have other franchises like Mortal Kombat and their upcoming Injustice 2 and Tekken's and all these other games, right, that have been coming out that might overtake it. And they don't want that because the Street Fighter is their bread and butter, right? Now, in addition to that, it's hilarious because some of these same players who are saying, oh, you know, top players aren't having any problems, these same top players who have no problems with Street Fighter V previously boycotted games. Let's talk real, all right? Let's go back to the EVO that I got 4th place at, all right? In Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. Let's go back. And you don't believe me, go fucking look at EVO results. I got 4th place in Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, and the top 3 placers were Japanese players. I was the best American player at Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo at that EVO, alright? But that version of the game was the PlayStation 1 version, and all the top Super Turbo players said, that version is inferior, it's not the properties of moves are different, the input delay is different, we're boycotting. And there were players, including Alex Valle, who's defending Street Fighter V now, who boycotted EVO that year and did not play in Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo because they thought it was an inferior game, and they were not going to play that year. Oh, but now, there's nothing else to play now, so now he can't boycott it, right? Because his whole business and everything rides on fighting games. Oh, isn't it funny how a few years later things change, huh? Such controversy, such hypocrisy from these fucking people, to be quite honest. All right, let's go back to the list. How about, the past games were needlessly difficult. Oh, no, what you mean is the past games needed to have a certain established skill level for you to be good at them. You actually had to practice and play and get at a higher level in order to actually progress in them. This game, you just want every Joe Splamoni to just play it for fucking hours, find the abusive characters who have the best properties, like I said, the invincible reversals and such, and just blow through everything. Bullshit. That's a bad rationality. Nobody needs single-player content in a fighting game. Well, guess what? I think sales numbers differ. I think gamers do want single-player content, and the game would have fucking sold if it had it, you numbnuts. Be grateful that Capcom listens to their fans. Oh my god. This is a good one. And the reason I gotta laugh at this one. Their fans? Their fans? No. Capcom listened to the competitive fighting game community. You know, that community that compromises about maybe 20% of the fucking market. You know, Street Fighter 4, if you look at the sales numbers, how many people who actually bought Street Fighter 4 went on to play that game at a competitive level? Now, I realize that what I'm saying is hypocritical to my past, and I will admit, in the past, I was wrong. When I was in the competitive fighting game community, all I cared about was the competitive fighting game community. I did not have the ability to see from outside my little bubble, and I thought everything should be catered to the competitive players. They were the only ones that mattered. But the bottom line is, this is business. This is money, and this is making an entertaining game as well as a competitive game. And the bottom line is, Street Fighter V, at its core, isn't entertaining at all. It's fucking boring. It's a small cast of characters. Only a few characters can really be played viably when it comes to a high tournament level without massive time investment, like Valle seems to say. You gotta play with these characters for like 2 years to get anywhere with those mid-tier characters. Yeah, because we all have that kind of time, right? The bottom line is, this game was designed for the hardcore competitive players, and everyone else, the other people who would be considered fans of fighting games, were ignored and left in the dust. And that's why the game sold so poorly, because when you focus in on the wrong group of people, you fail. Capcom did not do any proper market research when they wanted to see who actually bought Street Fighter 4. They tried to focus in on the wrong group of people when they made Street Fighter 5, and their sales suffered for it, and the game sucks too. So it's a double whammy. Not only did you not sell the game, it's also the worst competitive Street Fighter in recent memory. Congratulations, you really listened to the fans on that one. Let's keep going, because this is just a who. You Americans complain about everything. Well, I guess I'll agree on that one. I mean, Americans do complain about everything, but the bottom line is that Americans demand a greater standard for their money. You know, they work their asses off, they spend their hard-earned money on a game, they want a game that's worth what they're fucking spending. When you can buy a game that has ridiculous amounts of content for $60, and then you go buy Street Fighter V and you've played the whole cast and done everything in like 4 hours, no. That means that you did not create an equivalent experience, and the consumer, whether they're American or not, has the right to complain. You should stop playing it if you hate it. I agree. I actually agree. If you absolutely hate Street Fighter V, stop playing it. And I mean that for real, and here's what I'm going to say to everyone. You may have been the biggest fan of Street Fighter 4. You may have loved the game, right? You may have, man, I loved the game, and it was an amazing game, but Street Fighter V is just not as good as Street Fighter 4. Good. I'm glad that you actually have the self-realization to realize that you're playing a worse game. Stop playing Street Fighter V. Stop attending all the streams for Street Fighter V. Stop attending the tournaments for Street Fighter V. Stop paying money to the pro players of Street Fighter V for subs on Twitch, because that's their big business, right? Stop it all and go do something else with your life until a better game comes out. That's the bottom line. Because right now what's happening is, oh, well, everyone's complaining about Street Fighter V, but we're still playing it. And we're still going to tournaments, and we're still watching the streams, and we're still donating money, and we're still doing this. Well, then it's not going to get better, because you're supporting an inferior game. So if you really feel like me that Street Fighter V is an inferior game, don't play it, fuck it, and move on and do something else, and come back to it later when Capcom makes a better game. But they won't make a better game if you keep supporting the crap one. So that's actually a correct statement. The next one. Japan enjoys the game. I'm not even going to comment. Seriously, I'm not. Because if you think that what the Japanese do is like the end-all, be-all of everything on the planet Earth, all right? Well, you probably like taking tentacles up your ass. You probably like sniffing girls' panties that you bought out of a vending machine, you know? And you probably like having hard gay over your house for dinner every night. I mean, go move to fucking Japan. If you're such a fanboy of Japan that because some Japanese players like the game that it's the best Street Fighter ever, go move to fucking Japan and leave all of us realists at home where we could tell you the game's a piece of shit. There you have it. Oh, this is a good one. It's still better looking than King of Fighters 14. Yeah, you're right. It is. King of Fighters 14 looks like fucking ass. It looks like a fucking donkey's ass. But the game plays better than Street Fighter V. Last time I checked, gamers were always saying, all those competitive fighting game players, it's not about the looks. It's not about all the flash and the fancy. It's about the quality of the gameplay. That's what everyone always said over the years. You should still go play those classic 2D competitive fighters. It's not about the looks. It's about the gameplay. Okay, now all of a sudden Street Fighter V comes out. It's about the looks. Oh, Street Fighter V looks better than King of Fighters. Oh, wow. Let's just forget that whole other aspect you talked about, you hypocritical bastard. All right, let's keep going. Previous entries hit their strong point with later additions. This is very true. This is absolutely very true. I agree. And, you know, like I already said, games like Street Fighter 3 sucked at launch, right? It really did. Street Fighter 3 New Generation was terrible. Street Fighter 4 had one incredibly overpowered character at launch. The difference here is, again, there were other games to play. When Street Fighter 3 was out and everyone didn't like it, they went and played the other Capcom games. When Street Fighter 4 was out, yes, it was a reinvigoration. And even though Sagat seemed to be the best character in the game, people were still making honest efforts with characters like Balrog and Ryu and, oh god, now I'm having a brain fart. I can't believe I can't remember. Oh, Rufus and a few other characters. And eventually, yes, the Sea Vipers and the Sets came out. So, bullshit. Because, yeah, Street Fighter 5 or Street Fighter 4 was kind of very unbalanced at launch. Within 6 to 8 months, people were getting around Sagat, and then all of a sudden, within a year, you had Super Street Fighter, and it changed everything, right? Okay, let's keep going. This is great. I love this. Street Fighter 5 values footsies above all else. Well, that's true. The most delayed footsies ever in a fighting game, the most unreactionary footsies ever in a fighting game, and footsies you can't really do anything about because your inputs are so delayed. So in other games, if people just mashed high priority footsies, they would get punished. In Street Fighter V, you just do the high priority footsie and you get away with it because no one can do jack diddly shit because the game's so fucking delayed with the input lag. So you just gave another reason why the game's bad. I love this. Free space, insert your own bullshit reason right in the middle there for why this game fucking is good, because it's fucking shit. Street Fighter is as popular as ever right now. I've already explained. The bottom line is this. Because of the streaming era, because of the internet hype era, right? YouTube, Twitch, because of all this, because of the e-celebrities being made out of these competitive Street Fighter players. Street Fighter is very popular, but it was Street Fighter 4 that made it popular, and then supplemental games that built up hype like Marvel vs. Capcom and Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Street Fighter 5 has to hold that title, alright? Really, the popularity Street Fighter 5 is getting right now is based off of everything and all the good faith that Street Fighter 4 built up for it. If this game doesn't pull itself out of its own asshole soon, people are not going to be sticking around. People are going to be watching videos like this one and say, what the fuck am I doing playing this inferior fucking game? I could do better things with my time, and that's what people should be doing. Yeah, Street Fighter's popular because the pro players play the fuck out of it and say it's the best game ever when it's not, because they're liars. Holy shit. The only people who hate it are bad at the game. Ha 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 ha. Wrong. The only people who hate it are people who played it at a semi-competitive level or trying to understand it at a competitive level and innately know it sucks. You know what I mean? Like, oh, well, you're bad at it. No, what that means is I didn't waste my fucking time to adapt to a delayed fucking game so that I could play your delayed game at a competitive level. I've got far better things to do. I actually said earlier this year that if Street Fighter 5 caught on and like I liked it as much as I like Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, I would play it at a competitive level. I would give it a shot. After a couple of months, I knew it wasn't the case. I knew there was just something up with this game. And then when the 8 frames of input delay were announced, I was like, I knew it all along. There was something different about this fucking game that I can't play it like Super Turbo. And that's what it is. So fuck that. That is the worst reason. People who hate it are bad at the game. Yeah, because they didn't bother to waste their time like you fucking jabronis to make a buck playing it. They don't care about bad fucking games. Unreal. Such an elitist fucking thing to say, too. Street Fighter is the only relevant fighting game out there. And you know, again, might sound hypocritical coming from me, but I realize now that me in the past and me in the present are two very different people. There's so many other games out there. Games that don't even get credit. Skullgirls, the Guilty Gear series, the BlazBlue or Blaze Blue, whatever series. All very valid fighting games that don't get a lot of attention. King of Fighters 14 was just released. That game got like no hype and no attention. That game's fucking far better as a competitive fighting game, just built on the engine that Street Fighter 5 is. But these games don't get that attention. Because Street Fighter 5 is synonymous with Capcom, the well-known top game developer for fighting games. They get all the hype and the bullshit, right? Why? Sorry, if you make a bad game, you don't get a pass anymore. I'm sorry. I can't. My whole life I was a fan of Capcom. They don't get the pass anymore. Oh, it's the only relevant fighting game. Okay, you elitist piece of shit. You have that opinion, and I won't watch your streams, and I won't watch you play the fucking game. You can go fuck yourself and stick your elitist shit up your own fucking ass. How about that? Oh, God. Keep the boring long combos in Street Fighter 4. A lot of people in Street Fighter 4, admittedly, they said, you know, a lot of those combos were long, and you could FADC into the next, and then another combo into the next. Or I guess some people would say that Yoon, because he had his combo with his super, would be juggles and stuff across the screen. Yeah, admittedly, in Street Fighter 5, the combos are smaller, but they deal just as much damage. The length of the combo doesn't matter. And it's not about that. Yeah, Street Fighter 4 had a lot of flash to it because the long combo was flashy, and maybe some person who didn't understand the game at a fundamental level would think that's a better game because it has longer combos. 95% of people who actually attempt to play a game at a competitive level know that the length of the combo doesn't matter. It's the damage dealt and the viability of the combo. That is a stupid fucking statement. We all had the same complaints about Vanilla Street Fighter 4. I already talked about this. I already talked about how, yes, in Vanilla Street Fighter 4, Sagat was incredibly overpowered, but then you had other contenders like Balrog and Blanca and Seth and Sea Viper and other characters who played nothing like Sagat and also were tournament contenders. Right now, the upper echelon of Street Fighter 5, all are the same style of character. Imagine if Street Fighter 4 had 3 versions of Sagat as the top 3. And then everyone else, you know, under. That's basically what Street Fighter 5 is right now. Completely different situation. That's not a valid criticism or defense of Street Fighter 5 whatsoever. The new characters keep the game fresh. Okay. They suck, but they keep the game fresh. Except for Nash, you know, who plays like the other. To me, Street Fighter 5 really doesn't even about character selection anymore. I don't even see the characters or the sprites or anything. I just see the moves. So I see invincible uppercut, 3-frame abusable move. Invincible reversal, 3-frame abusable move. That's all I see. I don't even see the character design anymore. So I don't even care that there's new characters that look different. Fine. Okay, maybe for the first week that's something to keep you interested, but then it becomes down to the nitty-gritty of the fundamentals of the gameplay, not because there's new characters. Another stupid statement. Street Fighter 5 is an honest game. Because remember, Previous Street Fighter games were horrendous liars. I don't even really understand this statement. I'm sure that there's some big, long-winded explanation behind it of how the previous games were broken and, abusable by one strategy or whatever. And Street Fighter 5 isn't like that. It's a more, what's the word? Smash mouth Street Fighter, right? It's more pure and it's more that. And it's also more shit and more delayed, and it doesn't make up for any of that. If I had someone directly defending this statement, I would understand why. That's like the one I don't get. Oh, this is a great one. Bottom left. Wait for the game to be finished before you judge it. Oh, I guess 7 months wasn't enough to wait, right? Oh, well, now Urian's releasing tomorrow, right? I'm actually filming this the day before Urian's going to be live. So I guess because Urian's released tomorrow, that's the official game, right? So tomorrow, if I play it and there's still 8 frames of input lag, and all those characters that don't have the invincibility and the 3-frame moves still suck, I could just complain then, right? Because it's finished. But no, they'll say, well, no, it's going to be tweaked next year, too. It's going to have even more updates next year. It'll be different. That's the thing. They'll never say that it's done, because since they're not going to sell Super Street Fighter 2, or Super Street Fighter 5, or Ultra Street Fighter 5, it's never done. It's always an ongoing work in progress, so you can never complain. Get the fuck out of here. What a terrible defense. 8 frames is not a big deal. Fuck you. That's all I have to say. Anyone who's going to say that, who's a competitive fighting game player, and you're going to tell me 8 frames of input delay, the most input delay of any numbered and serious Street Fighter competitive game ever, is not a big deal. Fuck you. You're a dishonest liar, and you don't know how to fucking play a game at a competitive level. You just learned how to play a laggy game. Idiots. Street Fighter 5 had more stream views than Street Fighter 4. Already explained this. It's because of all the good-natured hype and love of the Street Fighter games that built up with Street Fighter 4 that got this community as big as it is, that got people to go to EVO and register for Street Fighter 5, the good faith of the pro players who are claiming this game is great. Basically, what you've got is a small group of great players pulling the wool over the eyes of the masses who follow them because they really like the feeling of being in a fun and competitive community, and it's bullshit. So, guess what? If you watch Street Fighter 5 at EVO, good for you. You watched the most inferior version of Street Fighter ever, and I feel bad for you because you basically did watch a real piece of crap. It would be like, you could have seen Citizen Kane, but instead you watched the Ghostbusters remake. And it's like, but everyone says, or I'm going to go back on that because that was a bad comparison. Citizen Kane is no Ghostbusters. The original Ghostbusters to the Ghostbusters remake, okay? Well, they're both called Ghostbusters, so they both must really be good. And let's face it, the hype back in the 1980s when Ghostbusters 1 was released isn't as much as the hype that they tried to build up for the Ghostbusters reboot. But when you go and see them next to each other, you realize they're not the same fucking thing. So if you really liked the Ghostbusters reboot this past summer, you probably really like Street Fighter 5. It's the same fucking deal. It's a piece of shit. All right. What's the last one here? Because this is good. Oh, lol, Guilty Gear. Because we all know that because these games have these anime-like characters and don't have the PR or the budget or the marketing of Street Fighter, that they're no good, right? Yeah, whatever you say. And then lastly, the game is perfectly balanced. Fuck you. That's actually factually and logically incorrect just from a competitive standpoint. Anyone will tell you it is not perfectly balanced. That's horseshit. So we just went through the Street Fighter 5 Defense Force bingo and literally ripped apart every defense that a pro fighting game player could give this fucking game. I'm going to end it like this. All right? I'm going to end it like this. As a lifetime Street Fighter fan, someone who's played this game at a competitive level, every version of the game. Now, I've never been a top tournament contender in anything but Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, admittedly. But I've been around the block, and I probably have more fighting game experience than 99% of my viewer base. The bottom line is this. Don't be fooled by people who are using you. All right? Just don't. Because that's literally what I'm seeing with stuff like this, with stuff like this, and with stuff like this. I see a desperate competitive fighting game community who need to keep people on their streams, who need to keep people paying them money on Twitch to watch them play these games, and they need to keep their fucking sponsorships for their joysticks. Yeah, baby, keep that money rolling in, because the bottom line is, if this game dies out and dries up, well, Capcom doesn't have plans to make another one, so I can't do this for a living anymore. And that is what's happening, all right? They're pulling the wool over your fucking eyes, right? There are people out there who don't rely on that as a living. And they probably will tell you the truth. I'm one of them. I don't know if anyone else has the balls to step up and say, listen, this game is not good. These people are kissing its ass for fucking the wrong reasons. It's very dishonest, and it's absolutely ridiculous. It is. It's dishonest. The bottom line is this. When you see a statement like this, and you're being told by a pro player, they're guilt-tripping you for legitimately criticizing a fighting game. You have to look at that, and you have to say, does that person respect me? They're guilt-tripping me for asking for something better just because this game developer has made something better in the past, and this isn't up to the expectations they've built off of their own track record, right? That guilt trip is the ultimate disrespect to you. And if you see that shit, that's when you know, fuck that. Run. You don't want to be a part of that. You don't want to be a part of that scam, that hustle, whatever the fuck they want to call it. That's fucking bullshit. When you're being told you don't have the legitimate right to criticize something because shame on you, you should just like it because it's fucking Street Fighter. Oh my god, like what? Yeah, that's like the most close-minded, crazy, fucking cultish kind of fucking mindset I've ever heard in my entire life. And it's insane. And again, I don't care. The bottom line is, I'm not going back to the competitive Street Fighter community. I'm not. I'm never going back. You're not going to see me at EVO playing at a high level. I've got other things in my life going on that are far more important. I don't care if I get blacklisted and banned and everyone talks shit about DSP and, oh god, that video he made was so scathing to the fighting game community and all that. I don't give a flaming fuck. Street Fighter V sucks. It's nowhere near as good as previous Street Fighter games. Capcom did a terrible job the entire time with the development, whether it was the insanely botched online play, the lack of features at launch, the fact that there's 8 frames of input delay, the fact that until this fucking patch that's going live right now goes live, because I played with a PlayStation 4 joystick the entire time that I tried to play Street Fighter 4, I had more delay than someone who used this pad. That is the signs of an insanely terrible game development fucking team that should not even be earning their fucking paychecks. That is a laughable joke. But because it's Capcom and it's Street Fighter V, we all have to forgive it, right? Oh, 7 months I've been playing on a joystick and I've had a worse experience than everyone else, but I'll forgive it because now they're patching it, right? Fuck that shit. Ask for more. Demand for more. You are the gamers. You are the consumers. You have the power in your hands to say, fuck that, I'm not playing this inferior game. And then guess what? Then, all of a sudden, if you stopped watching those streams and you stopped attending those tournaments for the inferior game, and if you just did all those things that you need to do, this list would disappear. Because half of these are all bullshit based off of the good quality of the previous Street Fighter games. Uh-oh, when that stream attendance dwindles, and when that tournament attendance dwindles, what's their excuse now? That's all I have to say. Don't let anyone talk down to you like that. That is so fucking disrespectful. You have the right as a consumer and as a gamer and as a person to complain, to ask for something greater, especially when you've been delivered something greater in the past from a game developer or anyone in your life. Don't let anyone shame you for asking for something that's better or deserved. That's it, everyone, for my rant on Street Fighter V. After I play with Urian, I'm probably not playing the game anymore unless they do rebalance it next year and actually make it more fair so it's not just the same few characters who have those invincible reversals and the 3-frame moves who are actually dominating the game, and if they actually reduce the input fucking delay. There's no way I'm playing with 8 frames of input delay. It's a fucking piece of shit. You cannot play it reactionary, and if people want to sit there, these top FGC players, oh, it's all about the meaties and the footsies because I could just mash the high priority moves and they work. Well, you can play your game, and I'll just go off and do my own thing, and you can have your piece of shit and have your own streams with the people who like to mash like retards. That's it. That's it for my rant, everyone. Thanks for watching. See you later.